While this podcast isn't rated explicit, the content may not be suitable for younger listeners.
Welcome to Sex for Saints, the Christian couple's guide to great sex. I'm your host, certified sex and marriage coach, Amanda Lauder. This is episode 320, Using Sex as a Bandaid.
Welcome to Sex for Saints, a podcast for Christian couples. My goal with this podcast is to help enlighten, educate, and inspire you to understand yourself, your spouse, and your sexuality better. I talk about sex in a way you probably haven't heard before. I'm bold, I'm direct, but I keep everything in line with my strong Christian values. Are you ready? Let's go.
Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the podcast. I am getting over that flu that I had last week. Still, my voice is still not quite where it normally is, but at least I'm not dying of coughing attacks this week. So that's really good. All right. So we all know that sex can be a wonderful way to connect with our spouses. It can bring us closer, enhance our intimacy, and really strengthen our bond. A little over a year ago, I was at an event with a lot of women, and a woman sat down by me and asked me a really important question. She said, "What if the sex is really good, but the marriage isn't great? Is this a problem?" And she and I talked about it at length that night, and so I decided it would be a good conversation to address here on the podcast. So what happens when we start using sex to cover up deeper issues within ourselves or within our marriage? So today we're going to explore that very question, using sex as a Band-Aid. So let's start with the personal side of things. Sometimes individuals use sex to avoid dealing with their own internal struggles. And these struggles can range from low self-esteem and insecurity to even anxiety and depression. So imagine you're feeling insecure about your self-worth. Maybe you're struggling with body image or feeling inadequate in some areas of your life. And in these situations, it's easy to seek validation through sex. The immediate pleasure and affection can temporarily make you feel better about yourself. But here's the thing. It's just a temporary fix. Once the moment is over, those feelings of inadequacy often come rushing back and the cycle begins again. And oftentimes you need more and more and more, right? So I'm thinking about a woman, let's call her Jane, who constantly battles with her self-image. She feels like she's not attractive enough or successful enough, and this eats away at her confidence. So whenever these feelings of inadequacy spike, she seeks comfort through sex with her husband. The physical closeness makes her feel wanted and valued, albeit briefly. And however, this really doesn't address her underlying issues with her self-esteem. So instead, Jane finds herself needing more frequent reassurance through sex, creating a dependency that strains her relationship in other ways. It's just never enough. Another common scenario is using sex to avoid dealing with emotional pain or trauma. Perhaps you've experienced a significant loss or are going through a really tough time emotionally. So instead of facing those feelings head on, it can be tempting to use the distraction and physical connection of sex to numb the pain. And while it might provide, again, a temporary relief, it doesn't address the root cause of your emotional turmoil. So I'm thinking about a man, let's call him Mark, who recently lost his job. And the loss not only affects him financially, but also shakes his sense of identity and purpose. So instead of talking about his fears and anxieties with his wife, he buries those feelings and seeks solace in their sexual relationship. The intimacy helps him escape his worries for a while, but the unresolved emotional pain continues to simmer beneath the surface, leading to greater stress and potential conflicts down the line. And I think most of us have done this at one point in our life or another. It's really common. And by talking about it today on the podcast, my purpose isn't to shame you or make you feel bad about this. My goal is always about bringing awareness to situations so that we can each work to be better. So yes, you've probably done this, but what do you want to do about it going forward? All right, so now let's shift a little bit to the focus of marriage itself. So couples can also use sex to paper over cracks in the relationship. And this often happens when there are unresolved conflicts, communication breakdowns, or unmet emotional needs. So I want you to picture this. You and your spouse have been arguing more frequently. Instead of having those tough conversations to resolve the conflict, you turn to sex. It's a way to feel close again without actually addressing the issues at hand. But as you might guess, this doesn't solve the underlying problems. So the same issues are likely to resurface, leading to more frustration and resentment over time. So let's take Sarah and John, for instance. They've been having disagreements about finances, with both feeling unheard and misunderstood. And rather than sitting down to discuss their budget and financial goals, they find it easier to reconnect through sex. Now, this gives them a temporary sense of peace and unity, but the financial stress and unresolved disagreements continue to cause tension, making the relationship more fragile over time. Another example of this is when there's a lack of emotional intimacy in the relationship. So you might find that you're growing apart. You're maybe not sharing your thoughts and feelings as you used to. So instead of working on rebuilding that emotional connection, you use sex to feel connected. Now, a lot of times, especially in the beginning days of the relationship, we do have that emotional connection. And then once you actually get married and start having sex, then that emotional connection falls by the wayside and it becomes all about the sexual connection, right? So while sex can be a form of intimacy, it can't replace the deep emotional bond that comes from open, honest communication and mutual understanding. So Lisa and Tom have been married for 15 years, and over time, they've become more like roommates than partners with very little emotional sharing or deep conversation. And they still have sex regularly, but it feels more like a routine rather than a meaningful connection. And Lisa has started to feel lonely and disconnected, but she doesn't know how to address it. Using sex as a stand-in for emotional closeness leaves her feeling empty, and the gap between them widens. So why is this a problem? Well, using sex as a Bandaid can lead to several negative consequences. For one, it can create a false sense of security. You might think everything is fine because you're still physically intimate, but the reality is the underlying issues are still there, festering and growing. And it can lead to feelings of emptiness and dissatisfaction. So when sex is used merely as a distraction or a quick fix, it loses its deeper meaning and connection. So over time, this can diminish the overall quality of your sexual relationship and your marriage as a whole. So imagine being in a relationship where sex becomes the go-to solution for every issue. Initially, it might seem like a good way to maintain connection and keep the peace, right? But as time goes on, you may start to feel that sex is just a bandage over a wound that's not healing. And this can lead to resentment and frustration and a sense of emotional distance, even if you are physically close. So what can we do instead? Well, the key here is to face the issues head on, both within ourselves and within our marriages. So for personal issues, I would really suggest coaching or therapy if that's what you feel like you need. But working with a professional can help you address the root causes of your struggles and develop healthier coping mechanisms. Additionally, practicing self-care and self-compassion are really important. Building a very strong sense of self-worth and emotional resilience takes time, but it is so worth the effort. Now, this is always the very first thing that I address with clients in my Embrace You Elite Society membership. At the foundation of a great sexual relationship is a great relationship with yourself. You truly can't have one without the other. So like in the example, even if you think the sex is good, if you're using it as validation because you actually don't feel good about yourself, then we have to fix that part first. Right? So earlier we talked about Jane, who has used sex as a way to feel better about herself. By seeking help, she can work on her self-esteem issues directly. Through coaching, she learns to appreciate herself and find validation from within, rather than seeking it solely through sex or through other outside sources. And this empowers her to have a healthier relationship, both with herself and her husband. Okay. Now, for marital issues, open communication is crucial. Have those tough conversations, even if they're uncomfortable. Work together to resolve conflicts and rebuild that emotional connection. Now, marriage coaching can also be extremely beneficial, providing a safe place to explore and address your issues with the guidance of a trained professional like myself, while getting help in having those hard conversations. I think I've said this before on the podcast, but so many times in my couples coaching sessions, I am actually helping them have those hard conversations in front of me. I'm kind of the, whispering in their ear of what they should say, although I want them to always say it in their own words, and giving them what they need to be saying to their spouse, and then the spouse's response in return of how to have these healthy conversations. The conversations where it's not ramping up and being emotional and we get defensive and we either get really anxious or we withdraw. Being able to have these hard conversations in a healthy way is so, so important. So if we go back to Sarah and John, this might mean sitting down to create a budget together, openly discussing their financial concerns and setting mutual goals together. So by facing the problem directly, they can find a solution that works for both of them, strengthening their partnership and reducing the need to use sex as a way to avoid conflict. And then the good sex that they're having can actually be about connection and intimacy and growing closer together rather than just the bandage over the wound. Sex is such a beautiful and important part of any marriage, but it shouldn't be used as a Band-Aid to cover up deeper issues. So by facing our personal and marital struggles head on, we can create a more fulfilling and intimate relationship with our spouse. It's not always just about better sex. It's about the whole package. Now, remember, I am right now offering half off the first month if you join my Embrace You Elite Society membership. If you use the code podcast at checkout, then you'll get the first month for just $24.50, which is such a steal. You can see how amazing it is and how much there is in there for you to work on. You can get personalized coaching from me one-on-one. It's such a great program. I also still have some spots available for couples coaching. So if that's something you're interested, you can find both of those things on my website if you go to amandalauder.com and click on Get Help in the menu. All right. Thank you so much for joining me today. Remember, love is a journey, not a destination. Stay committed, stay passionate, and stay connected. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye. If you want to learn how to apply what I teach you on this podcast, I want to invite you to work with me in my Embrace You coaching programs. In my coaching programs, I teach you all of the skills and tools you need to have a better relationship with yourself, your spouse, and your sexuality. You also get weekly coaching to help you apply what you are learning in your own relationship. For more information, go to amandalauder.com and click Get Help in the menu to see my programs for both men and women. Like what you're hearing on this podcast? Make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Don't forget to leave me a review and share it with your friends.